The funny thing is, this video was actually supposed to be about a day that I took just this lens out with me in Boston, but I was so unsatisfied with the results that it completely defeated the purpose of me making this video about embracing 50mm and this lens. Cameras and lenses and the way our gear interacts with our creativity on a stylistic level is such a weird phenomenon to me. With this lens gathering dust at the bottom of my bag for over a year now, it's been something I've been thinking about a lot more. It's a 50mm. Everybody else seems to love it. But I'm so used to shooting with 35 or 40 or even wider at 28. It's amazing how much of a difference those 10 or 15mm seem to make in the creative process. I don't know if you've had the same experience, but sometimes you know, I don't want to say get stuck in a rut, but you get, so used to using a specific piece of gear, whether it's a lens or a camera or a film stock or whatever, that it almost becomes a crutch, like you become too comfortable with it. So lately, I've been on a journey to try and fall in love with this lens. Even though this lens has been kind of a sticking point for me, I know it can also be a tool, a powerful tool, if I learn how to use it correctly. The whole idea of 50mm in street photography is that it gets you a little bit closer to your subjects without losing the context that we like to capture in our foreground and background elements. Yeah, there are definitely limitations, right? Like when you're shooting indoors or when you're shooting architectural stuff, like a really big subject that's right up close. But just statistically speaking, 50mm is such a great middle ground focal length because it really is not too wide, not too tight. But it's funny the way that these things work too, because thousands upon thousands of photographers can swear on a lens like a 50mm or a 35mm, and it just still doesn't click for you. It's so subjective, it's so personal, it's so, case by case for every photographer. So maybe something that everybody else loves really doesn't stick with you. Maybe you buy a cheap copy of a very popular focal length and proceed to not use it for 2 years. But sometimes in order to tell if that kind of resistance is something that we can conquer as artists, we just have to push through and try to keep going. I really think that there's a power in limitation, so I've been going out with just this lens quite a bit. Having a backup plan for me just means that I'm going to use the backup plan. Maybe you're different, but there's so much going on mentally in a street photography session for me that it can be really easy to let any little bit of friction or frustration win and stop pushing the boundaries or just start to favor the path of least resistance. But something clicked for me after a few sessions of just trying to power through. Sure enough, bringing only this lens and suffering through the adjustment period paid off. It was kind of like a switch flipped after over a year of kind of hating this lens and this focal length. I stopped looking at it as this flat nothing of a focal length and started understanding how it can be used to isolate subjects in ways that I would have missed with wider lenses. There are 3 times when even really good quality gear can be limiting. When you have too little, when you have too much, and when you're used to one tool. It's not bad to be familiar with your gear, but it's not great to pigeonhole yourself into one way of doing things. And to be honest with you, I think that this lens is the thing that finally got me to stop looking at the world in only terms of 28mm, 35mm, those wider focal lengths. It sort of broke me out of those mental frame lines that we all see in our head when we get too used to one type of lens. Am I going to keep shooting with my wider stuff? Of course. 50mm would be just as limiting on its own as any of the wider lenses, arguably more so since it's a tighter perspective, but I think the main takeaway is just to switch things up more often. Discomfort is the only way to grow. I mean, that's just a good rule for life in general. And maybe the answer isn't to go out and buy a brand new lens today or a brand new camera. I mean, I know this stuff is super expensive, but you can change other variables just as easily. You can get on a bus in your city and get off at a random stop you've never been to before. You can go out and shoot in the rain. You can shoot at night. You can shoot when the light sucks. Don't forget to push yourself and seek out that discomfort. It can be really easy to fall back on the things that we know really well, the things that we understand, the things that we know we get good results with, but are you making as much progress as you could be by sticking with those things? I think it's important that we're always looking for that next level of discomfort that pushes us forward. And it's fun. These challenges help us learn more about ourselves as artists, and I think that on top of just growing, because sometimes we get too caught up in progress and success and growth is the only metrics by which we judge ourselves. It can be fun, just strictly fun, to go experiment with a new focal length or shoot at a different time of day or whatever it might be. So if you're feeling bored, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like your work is repetitive, your days out shooting street photography are getting repetitive, don't forget why we started this in the first place, right? It wasn't to get famous and make money and get 1 million followers on Instagram. It was, because we liked art, we liked photography, we liked seeing photos and capturing them. So don't lose sight of that, and don't forget to push yourself.